Okay, so I decided that I'd like to try something new for EIR, and that is I want to try and make a kind of for fun company out of something that I don't see people use too often, that I myself don't use too often. And that is, I want to try out a full package Ranger company, right? So those of you, I assume everybody knows what full packages. It's basically a 200 munition upgrade where you get 4 Thompsons and 2 bazookas. Okay, it's costs you 200 munitions, which is quite a bit, right? Especially when you can just, decide to have your squad just focus on one thing and be good at that one thing, right? So you can just get your Thompsons or you get your bazookas for 80 or 130, respectively. And generally, those are better investments because, when it comes to company making, and at least in my terms, in my opinion, and when I make a company, I don't like spending too many munitions on a single squad. I mean, this can change, of course. This can change depending on the survivability of the squad, right? Like most baseline infantry squads, I would be very hard pressed to convince myself to spend more than 100 munitions on. Like, say, take your basic rifleman squad. The most I think I could ever see myself investing in a rifleman squad is like a bar plus a nade, or a sticky and a nade, or a zook and a nade, right? Or basically a nade and maybe something else, right? That's all I see myself investing, because then the platform is pretty weak and you don't expect the platform to survive very long. So you when you invest an excess amount of munitions in a fairly squishy platform, you are putting a great burden on yourself as a player to get your max out of those munitions, right? Now, let's say you have your rifle squad and you've spent 100 something munitions, no, like 100 munitions on your sticky plus like a zook, right? And you're sitting there and you're like, well, you got your Zook and you got your stick, and the Zook will probably be pretty easy to get your munitions back on. But then if you've got the Zook, you're very unlikely to, have vehicles get too close to you, so that sticky becomes really hard to use. So, okay, fair enough. You try, okay, well, let's try a bar plus a sticky, right? Maybe they won't suspect it, right? The thing is, your target of engagement with a bar and a sticky are so different, right? Like you're gonna through infantry combat that you face with the bar, you're gonna face natural attrition, right? Because that's just how infantry combat is. Like there's just a lot of natural attrition in infantry-based combat, especially infantry versus infantry. So there's a very good chance that your squad simply loses combat effectiveness before you even get your chance to use your stick. And in a sense, this is the problem you'll run into with the full package ranger. Now the full package, the Ranger compared to a rifleman, it's a different story, right? It's a far more survivable squad. You have the extra health, right, and you have the better armor. But so I think you can't see yourself investing more munitions in it. But even then, like generally speaking, I wouldn't want to spend more than 150 munitions in even this kind of squad, even this elite squad, even across all the factions. I think stormtroopers, Fallschirmjägers, uh, airborne, and rangers. I wouldn't want to spend more than 150 munitions because even though it is elite infantry, it's still very prone to things like snipers and vehicles, right? So you'll start losing bodies without getting much return on your munitions if you run into those kind of companies. And let's be fair, in EIR, vehicle-based companies are fairly common. In fact, I'd say they're probably in the majority in terms of company focus. Most companies will focus on vehicles in some way or form. And that's what makes spending large amounts of munitions on infantry-based units so difficult and so hard to sell to someone to use them is that problem you run into. Uh, but I've decided, you know what? I'm gonna ignore all those. I mean, it's nice. It's like, yes, I get the idea that you always want to try and win in EIR, right? But in the end, when you want to win in EIR, companies basically start playing very similarly. I mean, PE is a bit different, but to be fair, we have done quite a bit to PE to make it different from all the other factions. But yeah, generally, like your companies become fairly one-dimensional. Not in that they are one-dimensional, but in that they are set specifically to counter basic, cookie cutter opposition. Like you expect to face a certain number of tanks, a certain number of infantry, a certain number of like support weapons, and you end up basically having all your companies basically striving towards the same goal and the same plan and game, just with different units, and that's not fun to me, right? Because in the end, what's it, like you play an airborne company? Okay, you want about 6 squads of RRs, maybe a sniper, some light vehicles to support those, some hard AT if your handheld doesn't work out, and a few capping squads. And the same thing happens in your average infantry company. You want a few Zook squads, like between 4 and 8 Zook squads you'll be looking for, some capping squads, a few light vehicles, a few heavy vehicles, some indirect fire, and some smoke. Usage, and it's basically functioning towards the same kind of play style, just with different units. Armor, of course, can't do this. I mean, you could try with armor, but armor is unique in that it's basically not very good right now. It's very hard to have a very good armor doctrine without buffs to the armor, because otherwise, your armor is the same as any other doctrine. So armor doctrine is a hard sell kind of right now. And so what I'm going to try here is, instead of trying to create a multi-dimensional company, I'm going to actually create a very one-dimensional company to try and make things interesting, which is, I think, is a bit ironic, but that's just how EIR is. EIRR is. So, and for some of you who may know, like, it's not as if full package companies are a brand new idea. I mean, they've definitely existed in the past, and I think back when Tank Reapers was quite good, probably overpowered. I think most people remember that Lionel ran quite the quite the full package company, and I think he became quite famous for it. Now, this company worked a lot better back then because Tank Reapers was so good, right? So the Bazooka investment on top of the Thompson investment wasn't quite the liability that is nowadays. The reason I say that is, if you look through this, you have the full package squads, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 full package squads. So that's 8 squads of Zooks plus Thompsons, right? So you'd think that's plenty of AT. The thing is, this is basically all my munitions, plus these 2 mortars, right? But this is basically all my munitions. And munitions is normally used for, in the Allied company, the munitions are normally used for a few AT guns, which is basically, generally speaking, the backbone of your average Allied, or rather your average US company, is going to be your AT guns, because they are very effective. They put a lot of damage, and with AP rounds, they're quite consistent for penetration against things like Panthers and King Tigers, or a Jagdpanther if you do happen to see one. And not having those is kind of a big deal, I feel like. And so basically, in order to try and complement this lack of real hard AT, is you have these M18 Hellcats. Now, in theory, that's fine. Okay, yeah, you got Zooks for your soft 18, you got some Hellcats for your hard AT. The problem with vehicular-based hard AT is that you may run into a vehicle that is far harder than you at hard AT. For example, you may run into something like a Jagdpanther, right? And without AT, or a King Tiger, and without AT guns, or you're gonna have a real tough time. That even Panthers will give you a fairly tough time if if the player has their head on straight. So that's a serious issue we have right now, and I think the plan would be, if we do run to that, is you would hope that you just bring enough Rangers to basically push them off the field, is the plan. Now, here's the thing: there's a second weakness of the company. So, firstly, this company is severely lacking in the ability to counter very good armor, such as Jagdpanthers, Panthers, King Tigers, and I'd even throw the Hetzer into that mix. Hetzer, and to a lesser extent Stug chassis into that mix. The second problem is, despite having quite so many Rangers, it's still a fairly low body count for an Allied company. I think it's hovering somewhere around 60 to 80 bodies, and generally speaking, 60 to 80 bodies is where you see an Axis company hover around. And generally, barring some specialized Gran or Volk spam companies, you can, as an Allied player, you can usually hover around a 0.8 KDR and still have a very good chance at out-attritioning your opponent, even down to 0.7, 0.75. Problem is, when you're running a Ranger company, you actually need to be running that pretty positive KDR in order to be hoping for an effective attrition victory. So you're asking a lot, to be honest, because it's so very easy, especially with such an infantry-heavy company, to run into some brick walls, especially with a lack of AT, right? Like an IST would give this company a lot of trouble. Like an IST plus a Martyr would give this company a lot of trouble, right? Because they don't really have a lot of flanking options with this company. Because it's It's not very fast, despite the fire up you'd have in the Rangers. It's very rare to use fire up in an offensive manner, right? And Hellcats are a very expensive unit. Ideally, I would like to use the Chaffee, but I feel like the Chaffee penetration on frontal armor is a bit unreliable. And getting to the rear armor is quite nice, but I feel like that's probably something we're going to be doing with Zooks. Basically, any target the Chaffee can deal with, the assumption is the Zooks would deal with them just as well, so we don't really need the Chaffee in this company. So you're not really going to be flanking with Chaffee. Some A-mates would have been nice, but again, the AT was necessary, so the Hellcats came in, and we'll see how the Hellcats do. But I don't suspect they'll be doing too well. So that's a weakness, and so this company doesn't really cap very well. It does not really deal with tanks very well, and it's not highly cost effective. So, what is the possible advantage of this company? Well, I would hope that's actually very good in frontal assaults, as you would hope with the Ranger company, and that's basically why I want to play it, because I do want to just have a company where it's like, you know what, to forget all these common concepts of flanking and playing well. I just want to play kind of a dumb game, and I just want to play kind of a fun game. I feel like this company will let me do that. And eventually I think we can try and build this company towards something that can win a game, but I think you can't really assess that until you actually go into the company and see where the deficiencies lie. I mean, I've already laid out what I assume the deficiencies will be and what I assume I'll need to try and fix, but until you have a match with it, it's really hard to tell what you want to, how you want to fix it, and where exactly and how exactly it needs to be fixed. So that's the thing, like, I do suspect in the end this company will probably end up needing a sniper, which will by itself kill a full package squad. I do suspect this company will need a bit more mobility, either through half tracks or M8s and trading out AT. And I suspect they will need some hard AT, which will probably be a couple more full package squads going out. So I suspect at some point or another, if this company, I do decide to continue this company, it's going to eventually no longer be a full package company. Rather than being a full package, it's going to be a company with some full package. And I think that's the inevitable route. But until we get there, let's try some full package Ranger spam, and hopefully we can have some fun with that. And let's see what happens if we get a game with this or not.